One piece of social linguistics that was done near to where I live in Spain, on the use of Catalan and Spanish. They had the middle-aged university professor come and carry out interviews speaking Catalan, and everybody said they spoke Catalan all the time. And then they had the young student, attractive girl, come to the same people and ask the same questions speaking Spanish, and remarkably enough everybody said they spoke Spanish all the time, or most of the time. Okay? Rather than say, oh no, people are lying, well of course they're lying, they're always lying. They always tell you what you want to know, what they think you want to know. Okay? Take that as your object of analysis. You can say, for these people, with the young girl, they answered this way, with the middle-aged professor, they answered this way, let's analyze those differences. It's objective. Well, it's objective at another degree, if you like. And a variant on that is a bit sneakier, but it's having different observation situations. This was research on the use of patois among West Indian immigrant communities in Britain. And the sociologist was in her office, and the people were coming in for an interview. Middle-aged white sociologist asking questions in standard English, but while they were waiting, they had to wait outside for 15 minutes, and there's a big black cool Rastafarian who's speaking patois with them, and he chats away with them, and then the research was to compare what they said in the office with what they said while they were waiting, and how they said it. But that's a bit like the tape recorder under the sofa thing, but you get the idea. You're comparing different observation situations. In a university in Spain, we have a sociology department that is very big on this sort of thing. We get doctoral theses, dissertations for Americans. For example, one with a handicapped person in Tarragona, where I live in the city, and the whole thesis was her recounting her experience, her difficulties as a handicapped person in the city, as a narrative of applying theoretical ideas about social exclusion and applying them to her life as she lived it in the city. We have other doctoral theses based on diary records of what happens in a classroom interaction. Personally, I think those go too far. I think research isn't just your daily life or what happened in my class. These are interesting stories, might make good novels, but I personally think you need a structured set of procedures, you need a clear hypothesis, and you need something that can be falsified. I'm more a traditionalist in that sense, although I don't think that it's impossible to use a traditional scientific structure with an action research framework. Now, we can go back now and look at the anti-G20 questionnaire. And we can see, yes, it's designed to set up and elicit a certain response. It's designed to be action, but is it entirely bad? Somebody could, in theory, go in there and say, no, 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 G20 is doing well, thank you very much, and language minorities have even more exclusion in the poorer non-G20 countries, which might be true. Okay. Somebody could do that. It does allow for falsifiability. It could be falsified. However, the way it's set up as a discourse and the people it invites, including myself, are not likely to do that. And I suspect that what irritates me a little in it is that I am positioned as somebody who has to think in that particular way. And if not, the questionnaire is not for me. It can only reach one possible outcome. Here's another piece of research. This was done by the Directorate General for Translation in Brussels. It's on the use of translation in society. And there was a long list, I mean you get up to 62 I think, of things that translation can do in a society. Can you read it there? It helps, it can give, it can allow to understand, it ensures safety, allows dissemination of culture, informs consumers, ensures safety again, allows NGOs, etc. All good things. 62, really, I think there were 64 on the list. 64 really good things that translation does. This is why it's so important. And I and others had to list them in order of importance, and we got the top list of the good things that translation can do. I think these were the top things, actually. Yes. Yeah, legal rights of immigrants was number one. So much for the G20 excluding language minorities. Anyway. What's missing in that list? What are the major effects of translation in a society? I mean, could you think of anything else? What bothered me was that in the 64 things, nothing was negative. There was nothing like create misunderstanding, mistranslations, create expense, create delay, prohibit people from learning languages. If you've got a translator for free all the time, you're not going to learn the language of the host community. I mean, you could, if you were perverse enough, draw up 64 really bad things that translation does in a society. But they weren't in the questionnaire. Okay? And so this was research done by an intergovernmental organization, the Directorate General for Translation, designed to manifest the importance of translation. Because like all good bureaucrats, they don't want translation to be unimportant or the cause of misunderstanding. That is not the kind of information they wanted to find, so they didn't set out to find it. The other thing is, if you look at the studies of the translation market that are around, of what's happening, it's all positive. You know, even with the economic downturn, as you could say here, of 2008, 2009, you look in the press and the translation industry has weathered this quite well. Localization is still moving ahead. We've got great new technology, so many millions and thousands of billions in the market, so many millions of words being done. Everything's really cool. But who's doing the research? Well, the industry, the people who represent the industry. They're analyzing themselves and selling themselves to themselves and to people who are their clients. Used to be the Localization Industry Standards Association, now defunct, which is interesting, but there are others stepping up to the plate. I think I put online somewhere a Japanese translation company which presents this rosy picture. Even the American Translators Association is given to producing surveys where everything is great and going forward. But of course, that's the only conclusion these people are interested in finding. Well, perhaps the ATA is a little better in that respect because they want to have a positive role to fix things. They have to find some things that are negative, but in general, most of the information is affirmative. There are some exceptions, though. Have I done this with you before? No? This is the Order of Translators, Terminologists and Interpreters of Quebec. Quebec is important because French is a majority language in that part of Canada. And they tried in 2009 to ensure that in Quebec only members of the order would be called translators. At the moment, in the world, anybody at all can call themselves a translator. If you translate, you're a translator. Like you're a reader, you're a writer, you're a speaker, you're a listener, you're a translator. But in Quebec, they wanted to say, no, we are the only translators. Okay? Why did they do that? If you look around on their website, etc., they also take a strong stance against technology, against machine translation especially, which is enabling almost anybody to produce a translation or to understand a foreign text well enough for many circumstances. So they can see their professional activity diluting into something that almost everyone can do. And they're fighting against that. Now, instead of calling for research on that to see what actually happens when people use machine translation, or what happens when translators use machine translation, they have taken an overtly political stand to say it is bad, and we are the people who can do the good old hand, non-machine type translations, setting up a political opposition which didn't work. Their attempt to stop or to ensure that they were the only people who could call themselves translators didn't work, as it turned out, and should be the cause of some reflection. Within our interpreting community, we have something similar happening with respect to remote interpreting. Okay? And opinion surveys and research done on that, designed to manifest how can we say this? A negative reaction towards new technologies, not based on getting some actual knowledge about what the technologies can do and can offer. I think that if I were looking for things to do research on in translation in these years now, I think the first thing I would look at is, new technologies, and particularly the way they are helping volunteer translation. That means it's a big threat to us as a professional community. Not particularly to you in the places you're going into. Most of you are going into government structures of some kind, which provide secure employment and good salaries and have a comfortable life. We hope. Okay? But out on the edges of that profession, we have a growing activity known as crowdsourcing, or collaborative translation, or citizen translation, and there are many other terms as well. Basically, it's people working for free, translating for free, therefore I call it volunteer translation. This is from Facebook. Facebook, was localized very quickly by its users into many languages, and done so. Did any of you ever participate in that? I guess you're all on Facebook, but no. This is how it was done. This is from the localization process into Spanish. They're translating the phrase, "can't find who you're looking for," okay? And the different translators give proposals of what could be done. So we get, no encuentras a quien buscas, no encuentras a quien estás buscando, no encuentras a la persona que estás buscando, all right? You get three alternatives, and then the users vote on the best translation, okay? Usually, in this environment, the best translation is the shortest one, okay? Which happens to be the first one on the list there. Democratic translation. Never been done before. It's great. I mean, if we vote for our governments, let's vote for our translations as well. Okay? This is participative translating. And it worked very quickly. It worked because the people who know most about the way this language has to operate are the people in that community. So the translation is being done as a piece of action research, if you like. I think that a lot of research has to look at that kind of technology and that kind of volunteer engagement in translation and ask if it's a good or a bad thing. I mean, it didn't take a lot of work away from professional translators. And the basic thing you'll discover, I hope, is that rather than take work from professional translators, it's just enlarged the cake, the amount of translation that happens in our societies. Go on to .sub again, and you can see all the free subtitling that's being done. Okay, that wouldn't have been done before. It's enlarged that cake, and it means that our societies are becoming more translative, more open, more given to exchange with other cultures and other languages, which I think is a good thing. And I don't think that will take work away from professional translators, who in the end will be required to work with volunteers, revising, fixing up, copy editing the work that's done at a higher or more demanding level. Sorry, that's just the... To conclude, looked at in this perspective, a lot of the work that's being done in translation studies is being done with an action discourse perspective, but they don't know it. They're doing it, but they don't know it. They know not what they do, somebody said. Jesus Christ, Karl Marx, Hegel, Lenin. Anyway, for example, I've mentioned occasionally, I think that I'm very interested in the amount of process research that's being done. And we could do a lot of studies now, look at what happens when translators translate. They compare novices with professionals. Here is Egmont Dimitrovic summing up what she's found. Professional translators have a high degree of consciousness regarding textual features, global strategies, and they're aware of the communicative purpose of the text. They verbalize global strategies, translation principles, and personal theories, etc. And I think I've got a list of 10 things like that. That professionals do more than novices. Did I give you that lecture? Perhaps not. Okay. Now, fair enough. But who are these professionals? Why did we decide to focus on these professionals? Why are we interested in manifesting what they do better than the novices? Which is in fact saying what people who are paid to do translations do better than people who are not paid to do translations. Now, Common Sense Advisory said in 2008 that there are about 700,000 professional translators in the world. I think that's overstated. I think it's more like 325,000, but anyway, it's quite a lot. In all the process studies that I've looked at, I've counted how many subjects are used, and I get to under 300. I probably haven't seen them all, so we say a bit over 300, perhaps 380, okay? 380 people are representing, well, 325,000 at least, about 700,000. What kind of sampling is that? What kind of representativity is that? Who are these professionals? And I go through and I pick up the way these professionals have been defined and located. From particular companies or 3 years' work. The interesting one is the last one, which we recruited from PROS, which you might know about, okay, which was a disastrous experiment. We got, I think, 5 translators who had to use Trados. We discovered 3 of them couldn't use Trados. They lied to us, and our experiment was a disaster. The whole research design here is to say to these select people, 300 people, you're our friends, you're helping us with this research, we're going to tell you why you're so much better than those other guys, or these crummy students that I've got here. Okay? The whole way it's set up is designed to only look for those positive differences that come through training. Why? Because that justifies the position of the trainer, who is also the researcher. I am a little upset that very little of this research even asks question that might, any kind of question, that might empower the novices, or the people who are the volunteers, or have zero training in translation and could benefit from a quick crash course, what they have to do to work with Google, Google Translator Toolkit, Facebook, DocSub, or whatever. A lot of our research, our professional research, is designed to bolster the illusion of an exclusive, perfect profession that is protected as if by a moat from the seething hordes of volunteers and new technologies. That is, we are at the moment empowering professionals, we're empowering people who produce technologies as well, as to a lesser degree, and we're not doing anything to empower the volunteers, who are the people who are perhaps doing most to enhance the role of translation in our societies. To that extent, and without sacrificing the principles of science, I am very much in favor of action research.